Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Kalwarowski, flying solo again, but of course, we have a special guest, the CEO of Republix, one of Canada's top fastest growing companies of 2023. Thomas Maguer is here with us today. Thomas, how are you?
Great, Ron. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining the show. And of course, before we jumped on, Thomas was telling us about he's been down. I mean, he's from Costa Rica, so we were talking a little bit about moving down here again. Now, before we get into that part, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So Thomas, I'm out of Toronto right now. Personally, married 18 years to my beautiful wife, Nicole. We have six children together, five sons, 17, 15, 11, 4, 9. I skipped the 9. So that's five boys and a little baby girl who's 1. So it keeps us busy on the family front, but a lot of joy, a lot of fun. And so that's me as a man on the personal front and professionally. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Republix, where we have 900 clients, and we kind of specialize in helping businesses grow predictably and hassle-free. And that's kind of our corporate mission, right? Just to help businesses win and make it easier for them to do so.
Absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about that, of course, some more. But before that, you were telling me about the thought process you had last week at a mastermind about skipping from linear and more thinking about what you truly want to do. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. For me, I believe in a higher intelligence, that somebody would call it God, universe, energy source, whatever that thing is, that's what I'm referring to. And and one thing that's also clear is that life is very finite, right? Like the life that we know it in this physical world within this body is a one-time shot. And and I feel that a lot of folks, especially entrepreneurs, which is my core area of focus, as
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, we're very, very focused on achieving. We're very focused in rational ways of making decisions. Our job as CEOs and as entrepreneurs is resource deployment and allocation to create value, right? So it's a very cerebral situation. But at the same time, there's this intuitive aspect of things that guides decisions. And it's oftentimes what people call the gut, or intuition or things of that sort. And what my wife and I are looking at is, well, what is it that we truly want out of life? It's not a situation of I'm 60, I'm 80, like let me see what I want. No, I I I'm young now. I want to enjoy what life has to offer. I want to experience the world. And so in a linear way, let me just give like an example. In a linear way, I'm like, oh, I want hot weather, but from a business standpoint, I think probably Florida would be better than Costa Rica and blah 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 blah, right? Still warm, awesome. This children will have amazing schools, and have access to the largest capital markets in the world, blah blah blah. Okay, that's one style of thinking. It's a linear style of thinking, way better than my experience right now within Toronto or otherwise. So that's one. But we've lived in Costa Rica, and there's no place where I was ever happier and where I know I will end up there. But then the question then becomes, and the kids had amazing schools there. We lived by a beach. I had some of the highest production at the level of Republic. I mean, during that time, we went from 10 million to over $30 million in 7 months during COVID. I mean, it was amazing. So I was more productive. I was happier at a 10 all year round, which feels pretty dang good as well. My kids were doing so amazing. They still talk about it today. So, okay, so why not that today? Why would that have to wait? And again, it goes back to what is this linear thinking that we have? What are these preconceived notions as to why we should do something But the preconceived notion is really one that that is not, it has nothing to do with what I truly want today and what my intuition slash heart slash spiritual self is saying. But no, go here, everything's going to be fine. Even though there is a track record and proof points from the past that say that was a wonderful decision. Isn't that strange? So it's just being aware of this. Because a good friend of mine, found out that he had cancer. And so when confronted with a situation like that, there's an exercise that a good mentor of mine gave me. His name's Offer Breyer. He taught me to think in methodologies and processes and models. And he said, if you had 1 year left to live, what are the 10 things you would do? And then a day later, he asked me, what would you do if you had 6 months? And then the next day, he's like, how about 3 months? What would you do if you couldn't get any more time, but you only had 3 months? What would you do with that time? And then 1 month, then 1 week, then 1 day, then 1 hour. And so as I was flying back yesterday, I redid that exercise that I did back in 2015, which is when I officially began a company with it was starting to hire employees instead of being just a consultant. And it got me realigned with what really, really matters. And what's super interesting is that my answers from 10 years ago are 90% the same as today. And so it goes to show that this truth we know. We just tend to forget it. There's like this illusion, this thing that happens because we get so busy and so cerebral in terms of what's happening, but the underlying truth is still there, right? So that's kind of the long and the short of it, Rob.
I love it. And it's something we work on a lot, right? And it's it's basically our conditioning and our mindset that we learn to believe versus who we are truly on the inside.
Agreed.
And, everyone tells, like my parents were like, hey, do well in school, then you can go to the best college you can, and then you can get a job, and then you'll be happy. White picket fence, 1.5 kids, a wife and a dog, right? A golden retriever, right? And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that keeps us in that linear thinking. But it's what you're saying, exactly what you do in entrepreneurship. It's about disruption. That's when you make the big gains. And that's what you're thinking about.
Absolutely. And it's funny because we overthink things a lot. I see that often in entrepreneurs. I try to counterbalance it on my end because I pull the triggers relatively quickly. So the
Hmm.
feedback loop for me relative to my team and the folks that I have surrounding me is to allow the idea to percolate just a little bit, like a day, and then be able to bring it out into the world. Um, but in general, we overthink things because intuitively, the decision that you would make is the correct one if you were to take action on it, right? And that's very much what happened. Like in the case of Costa Rica, a friend of ours was like, "Hey, I'm in Costa Rica right now. You should come." I was like, "Okay." And then they shut down our province the second time right after Christmas. And I was like, "I'm not doing this. Wife, kids." We packed 7 suitcases. I put 3 monitors in there, threw my tower in. We zipped it up. We were gone the next day. Best decision we ever made, right? Or one of. We've made many
Yeah.
good decisions. I've also made many bad decisions. And some of them bad decisions are the ones where I didn't have the courage to follow my intuition, funny enough. So that, we know inside what we should be doing. It's just, do we have the discipline to go ahead and listen to it? Do we have the intuition or the awareness to even listen to the intuition? And then do we have the courage to go ahead and follow what that thing's saying? Right? Three very different things, but three very intense, um, intense frames.
I love it. I absolutely, I mean, of course, we're super aligned with this, but this is amazing. And I mean, of course, Thomas, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, founders, business owners that listen to the show. And you mentioned about Republix, about how it's about sustaining growth and helping your clients sustain growth and win. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. So we just as a matter of context, like we've generated on a trackable basis about $725 million in revenue for our clients in the last 3 years. And and this is done in different methodologies depending on the industry. But like one such way is in like for business to business, we have proprietary technology that uses LinkedIn, email, and a variety of other tools and leverages AI at the same time to be able to generate leads on near autopilot, which is like pretty incredible. So that one software is doing approximately 20,000 qualified leads a month for our clients. And it's tremendous because it's really changing the game for them, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, like they don't have 10-person business development teams. They're the ones writing the copy. They're the ones running the tools. They're the ones answering and trying to get the appointments. They're the ones delivering. They're the ones operating. It's brutal. But now, because of AI, it's made such a huge difference because now the copywriting, the booking of the reply into the calendar, all of this is being done automatically in the voice of the entrepreneur. So that's one tool, which is very, very powerful, and we're seeing big traction. One way we help them grow. Another way is that a lot of businesses, this is once you get to a larger small business or mid-market small enterprise, that's kind of like, 100 employees, couple hundred employees, is then they're looking to see how to deploy technology for their businesses to engage with their customers, to increase revenues, to drive more engagement with their company relative to their customers. So the way we do that is we build their applications. We'll build apps. We built the app for Fisker. We built the app for Acorn. We built the app for Quicken Loans. We've built some pretty powerful apps that engage the customer base. And now that technology is so important, so prevalent, we'll take an entrepreneur's idea and be like, okay, let's do a blueprint. Here's how we get to MVP. Here's how we iterate on a 2-week basis. Let's be agile and let's get this thing out into the market. So we help them build real technology customized to what they have in their minds to be able to engage with the market because that's important to generate revenue, right? And then of course, like full-scale campaigns, product launches, and anything that has to do with bringing that digital footprint to market, right? So those are the different ways that we help them here at Republix. It's either generating leads, it's generating sales, or building digital infrastructure customized to them, software and application development to bring their ideas to life.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And can you tell us more? Like, of course, in our business, what we've struggled with is actually like sustainability and like having it predictable. How does Republics help folks get that predictability?
Well, the foundation of predictability is process, right? And then the to ensure that the process is complied to, you need technology, right? Because then the human by default will fail. So when it comes to like A, B, C, D, at some point in time the baton drops and it sucks, right? So
Yeah.
that's where technology comes in terms of being able to enable that. But let's say in the case of your business, like you're probably marketing to other businesses, right? And you're looking to connect most likely with their most senior leader. So that could be a CEO or founder or an owner, right? So at that point in time, it's and let's talk about predictability of marketing, getting the right kind of leads. So the first thing is just making sure that you understand what your strategy is. And like that can be ethereal, but it's what is the end goal, right? What is the revenue you're looking to generate this year? Okay, step one. Step two, like what are your conversion rates on that? Okay, therefore, and what's your average deal size? Okay, based on that, what's your pipeline? Okay, based on that, how much pipeline per month do you need? Based on that, how many appointments do you need? And based on that, how many leads do you need because some of them don't show up? And based on that, what is the input that is required into the system to allow that to occur? People don't do that math. And it's simply a math exercise to start. Based on that, it then says, okay, what are the tactics that are best suited to be able to execute on that math, right? Let's say in your situation, then it might be a situation of maybe you're going to need, some LinkedIn, email, and we're going to need to scale that with three different accounts, right? Three people on your team will need to go and produce according to those metrics for you to achieve that pipeline. Great. That's kind of the how. And then from there, from a predictability standpoint, then it's okay, well, we need 3,000 inputs in terms of names per month or whatever. Who are those 3,000? Make sure that we have a backlog of those 3,000 for the next 3 months. And then that ensures the predictability because the software is taking care of ensuring the proper delivery of the plan, right? So that's kind of how we end up doing it. And then each month or even each week, we fine tune. How can we make it a little bit better? How can we squeeze a little bit more? What is the real data to plug back into that initial plan? Be like, Rob, turns out that your conversion rates weren't as good as you thought, right? Or the show up rate is lower than expected. Okay, what are we going to do to fix the show up rate? And in the meantime, let's go ahead and put more throughput. And that way, regardless, you're going to be fine. But once both things hit, you might actually be better than fine, right? So these are some of the ways that we look at it. It has to be dynamic. And once there's a good baseline, you can add things on top that are kind of like amplifiers. So once you have LinkedIn, once you have email really firing well, maybe you're going to want calling done. Okay, well, that will amplify if it's done against that same list. Maybe you're going to want a better converting website or some sort of webinar that people can come to. Okay, that's a funnel methodology that will go ahead and increase conversions. So we just have to look at the holistic picture, but it starts with let's get you some leads, let's get some sales, because once you've gotten some sales, you can fund the rest of your activities from those results.
Totally. Now, I mean, I know our first time we talked, you were very passionate about helping other entrepreneurs succeed and grow. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do on that side?
Sure. Well, I for now, it's not really work because it's not a full-blown project, but it's kind
Mm.
of a personal mission, right? Which is to help entrepreneurs grow exponentially. And this has to do with external growth, like from a business standpoint. This can happen organically, which is what we do at Republix. There's also acquisitive growth, which is something that I know a few things about. I've acquired 9 companies. So there's different ways to achieve the external growth of an entrepreneur and wealth creation. Cool. But then there's helping entrepreneurs grow exponentially internally, which I think is actually the biggest game, right? Because there's relationships, there's your marriage, my marriage, right? There's my children, who I am as a father, there's my health, there's my spiritual life. But at the same time, like I am an entrepreneur, right? And entrepreneurs are different. We cannot function like other people. Like how we think, how we operate, how we're wired by default is obsessive and will destroy all other areas of our life if we're not attuned to it and aligned with who we are relative to our values, right? So that alignment there, I've gone through hell and back. I've learned a lot of things. I am a very aware person, and so why not shortcut that and help others? So I do that on an informal basis with entrepreneurs that I work with and that I advise because I understand how hard that is. But one of these days here, over the coming year or so, I'd really like to be able to help in a much bigger way. And I used to do that with one of my nonprofits that would bring hundreds of entrepreneurs together here in Toronto and guide them through a curriculum of of health, wealth, relationships, spiritual exercises, and then their business at the center of it. And how do we make sense of all of this in a way that won't destroy them, but actually be amplified, right? So that's kind of like a personal mission in terms of how I help those entrepreneurs. And on a corporate level, then that happens, through Republics, right? And growing their companies, making that successful. Because by default, when there's more revenue and there's more cash flow, the entrepreneur can feel a little bit better, but usually they don't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah.
or they'll self-sabotage it or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's kind of a personal ethos. I believe that entrepreneurs are the ones that change the world. I think increasing the productive capability of the entrepreneur is the highest leverage thing that we can do because they solve the problems, but at the same time, we got to make sure that their lives don't fall apart, right? And the faster we can empower that entrepreneur to win, the more impact I believe that will have. So yeah, that's a little bit about who I am and kind of the personal mission of helping entrepreneurs.
It's incredible, and we're totally aligned on that too, as part of folks taking that next step and really changing the world. Because I'm 100% with you. Is what we're doing right now. I mean, we can see the results for that, and we need some new ideas out there to sort of push that along. Now, Thomas, like because you're in tune with a lot of those entrepreneurs, like what's if you could think of like what's the top one or two barriers that they have from taking that step to success? And this
Hmm.
can be internal or external. It's up to you how you want to answer this.
I think there's a I think there's a huge issue at the level of time and energy management.
Yeah.
If I listen across the most successful entrepreneurs that I'm connected with, we're we're all talking about energy and time because it's finite, right? And so, what are am I using my time in the highest leverage way? Are the activities, any activity that I'm doing in the highest leverage quadrant, right? So like this view around time, I think is very, very important because I believe that there's a misconception and one that I'm still battling through and like working through of just grinding,
Yeah.
right? Like 7 days a week, long hours and whatever. And and it's something that I'm starting to dismantle and disprove because I've been trained as a scientist, right? And so the hypothesis is you grind amazing. The method is okay, so the hypothesis is you grind hard and you're going to get amazing results. The method is you do everything because you're the best at doing everything and just grind it that way, and then the outcome is you're going to be successful, right? And um, not necessarily true. Like, have I made it far this way? Yes. And I started taking days off. Like, I, most of the time I feel a little bit embarrassed, but I work 7 days a week. I like it. And on the weekends, now I'll take one day off and work a half day on one of the days. Usually like very strategic, high level planning, reflection work. I love that work.
Hmm.
But I'm still working, right? And so I'm starting to track these days of freedom, like how many free days where I'm unplugged. And during that time, business has performed better, right? Revenues have increased. Okay, interesting, right? So I'm starting to measure these things, and then it's like, well, how does Richard Branson, who's running like 400 companies, he's not running them actually, right? And so he is doing what he does, and those companies generate billions of dollars worth of revenue and whatever it is, and he does what he wants. He does the work that gives him energy and that he's passionate about. And so when I see that, it's like, well, wait a minute, he's not grinding, but he's very successful, right? And I think it's also a situation of just being very clear in terms of what success looks like for me, right? Because it's very easy to fall, and I would say this is a second thing, falling into any sort of comparison. I think that's a very deadly trap. It's not because what are you comparing against? You can't. You're different people. with different circumstances, with different situations, you can't. There is no comparison. The only comparison is to yourself and where you were a week ago, or a day ago, or a year ago. Is it moving in the direction, in a positive direction across the areas that matter most? Yes or no? That's black and white. The other aspect is it moving at a pace that you're satisfied with? Right? Okay, well, that's another one. Because that also ties into like, what do you want to accomplish with your life? Right? And so I think just going through the motions for the sake of it is kind of part of it, because the ethos is I just love what I do. I'm gonna grind. And but having clarity on what it is that I want, how I want to be, like what do I want to do, and then from there saying, okay, well, how does the business need to be to support that, right? And so I'm making a lot of headway in there and realizing that it's not, again, it's not linear. It is not rational. It does not make sense that I work less and make more. It does not make sense that I work less and the business is better. None of that makes sense. It doesn't mean that it's not true, right? And I had a mentor of mine that used to say, you know, um, absence of evidence is not evidence of its absence. Just because I don't see it and I don't know it doesn't mean it is not true. It's just I have not experienced it. It is not in my known world, but it doesn't make it not true, right? So I'd say those are the couple things there.
That's that disruptive thinking again.
If it
It
were
is.
linear, everybody'd do it
Yeah.
because it would just make sense.
Part of it, and I see this a lot actually, in podcast world. I talked to Ed Bryant last week. In real world, I talked to him a few hours ago, but he's in M&A, also one of Canada's fastest growing companies, um, with Sanford Associates, and they advise folks on M&A. And he was saying he talks to, of course, he talks to a lot of founders, and he was saying when they talk about legacy or they talk about their future, for them it's almost always their business is their legacy. And he was like, well, especially in M&A world, if you sell your company or you merge it, it's out the door. Like it's going to be basically like the brand's not going to exist anymore, or at least in the way you think it is. And so it's almost this decoupling between you and your company. And of course, as a high achiever, for me, it was this element of decoupling my self, I suppose, with the results I produce. And so this is something um, that a lot of folks, entrepreneurs or not, really struggle with. And that's, I mean, it's most of it's how we're raised.
100%. Because that is, I wrote that down because it's true. This tied identity to the business, like, and I went through a series of things here over the last 6 months where I had to really reflect and say, I am not the business.
Mm-hmm.
I I am a lot more than the business. The business is one representation of or manifestation of what I've been able to do. But everything that went into its creation, in its evolution, in whatever, that is all inside of me. That can never be taken away. And so from that standpoint, like one of the core things is like, I am not Republix. Like it is its own thing. It is a self-managing entity that can keep on moving, and my identity is not it. It's something that I've done, yes, but I am not it. It is not me. I am not defined by it or what it does, right? I obviously want it to crush it and be
Of
awesome and be a
course.
reflection of my values and all these different types of things, right? But it does not define me, right? And I think that's really important. And that's where these other aspects come in of, my wife, my children, my health, how I contribute to the world, who I am, my spiritual self. Like these things matter, my mission, right? Like that's who I am,
That's
right?
right.
The business is not who I am. And I invite that as well for all the entrepreneurs out there. Like your business is not who you are, it's a business. It's a corporate entity that has stuff that produces value for the market, receives money for that, and then there's a level of expense, and the game is kind of hopefully, well, it depends if you're funded or not, but the game is have more revenue than expenses, right? Like that's the game, and keep on going and add more value and realize that value depending on what it is you want to do. But that's not you. It's a thing you do, right? It's a little bit like, I'm not a surfboard, but I like surfing. Okay, right? And if I fall off the surfboard, it doesn't make me a bad person. But oftentimes the entrepreneur will fall down and be like, oh, like I'm such garbage, man. But kind of go into like this depression. It's, dude, you just fell down, get up. It's all good. Now, it sounds way simpler to say it that way. It's not that simple because it is very emotional. And again, why I think entrepreneurs need that community and that degree of support to say, hey, you're not alone. We all go through it. All of us, 100%. And if somebody says they're not, they're just lying. It's that simple because it's 100% of us that go through that.
Absolutely. And it's for this, right? I just want to compel folks. This is the reason for the deeper work on psychology is one is it helps you decouple your identity from your business, but it also helps you rebound a little bit quicker from those inevitable mishaps or downturns or whatever, right? And it keeps you performing better over the long term. So now, obviously, Thomas, I just want to give you a chance here. Is there any way that folks, or how would you recommend folks, if they're listening and they're like, I love what you're doing, both, with your mission as well as your business, to connect with you to get those sustainable results? How can they find you and where do you want folks to go?
Yeah, easy enough. Just email me, Thomas, Thomas, at Republix with an X.com. That's it. Just email me. Hey, heard you on the podcast. Need help with this. Done. And I'd be more than happy to help, either personally or through my company or people that we know, right? Because one of my core values is better together. So just reach out, Thomas at Republix with an X.com.
Perfect. I'll drop that in the podcast notes. Also, I'll drop Thomas's LinkedIn in the podcast notes if you want to find and follow him there. And then obviously Republix.com is their website if you want to check out more of what they're doing. Now, this is the fun question that we love to ask all our folks that come on the show is, Thomas, what do you want your legacy to be?
So it's, I really, so legacy in terms of like what I'll be remembered for when I die, what legacy relative to like how I operate, like legacy in terms of what?
How you want to be remembered or your impact?
Okay, got you. I would want to be remembered for somebody who was bold and courageous, and that loved people, right? And that built people up. And that I think the folks that have worked directly with me would say that they are better because of it. And that there were times that they maybe wanted to strangle me. But in the end, they became so much more, right? And so I also want to be remembered with the fact that I think you can be a great man, a great husband, a great father. You can be healthy, strong, spiritual, serve a higher power. You can be rich and you can be kind. I think all those things are not mutually exclusive, and I'm here to prove that, right? So these are the different ways that I would want to be remembered and that I impacted many, many, many lives that I didn't know, and that it didn't matter that I didn't know them, but that, I made a difference in millions, hopefully hundreds of millions of lives. and made an impact with my life that it mattered, right? So I think that's the legacy I'd like to leave.
Good thing we got that recorded. That's who you are. And so now it's reincorporating that, but that's who you truly are. And it's amazing to hear it. Thomas, it's been absolutely incredible to have you on the show. You're an amazing guy. And yeah, it was an awesome interview.
Thank you. Well, it's been great to see you here. Thanks for having me on. And if there's anything else I can do, just let me know.
Absolutely, folks out there. Thanks for listening. And of course, share this interview with any other leaders in your life. And for all things executive coaching, leadership development, and more, head on over to elitehighperformance.com for all of that. Such an incredible interview. So much there for folks. So you probably have to listen to this one twice. And then, of course, if you have anything you want to connect with Thomas with, his email is in the podcast notes, so you can fire him an email. Amazing. Everyone, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Take care.